What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see in front of me here, we have the Kaizen Foam. In the last video, we did a unboxing, kind of like an initial review of this stuff. So in today's video, we're going to work on cutting this stuff to size because we have to cut each one of these 2 foot by 4 foot sheets to fit all the drawers in these toolboxes right here. To give a quick little rundown of what this is, these are 2 US General 44-inch toolboxes from Harbor Freight, of course, that I've bolted together, which happen to fit perfectly in between the uprights of this 90-inch or 94-inch shelving. But that way we can have all the tools in the toolbox, still have a bunch of shelves because I have a bunch of random stuff in this garage that I need to have somewhere to put. But long story short, a lot of these drawers, like we can take a look at this one, just has a bunch of loose tools and bags and some more right there. These tools are all from the Quinn set that we unboxed a few weeks ago on the channel, and this whole side has a bunch of wrenches. Some are in holders, some aren't in holders. In this tote right here, we kind of went on a little bit of a tool spree at the store. We got a bunch of new stuff. There's a ton of stuff in here, but long story short, we need to start getting this stuff organized so that way I can have everything laid out in the toolboxes, laid out in the toolbox foam, so I can finally get stuff organized in here. So without any further ado, we're going to get into how we're going to cut this stuff and take a look at how we're going to do it. Jumping right into how we're going to be cutting this stuff up today, there's a couple different tools you can use, a couple different methods you can use. The first one being FastCap, the manufacturer of the actual foam itself, does sell a whole bunch of knives. If you watched the last video, you saw we got 2 of their knives. We got the regular Kaizen knife and then the Kaizen thin knife. Those 2 knives are used mostly to cut the actual foam out to fit the tools, not so much to cut this stuff to size, just because the blades are a little bit thinner. FastCap does make a knife sled that holds a thicker blade, and it keeps the blade nice, square, straight up and down, so you can cut the stuff and get a nice square cut. I didn't buy that one, and I'll tell you here why. We're going to try and cut the stuff out with a table saw, so that way we can set the table saw to the correct width, correct depth, and just rip all of this stuff to size. Hopefully it'll be a nice, even, consistent cut every time, and it'll be nice finished edges on it. I don't know how it's going to work. I have seen people do this in videos. I'm pretty sure FastCap themselves have made a video on this, but they used the thicker 57mm thickness. We do have the 30mm thickness here. I don't see a reason why the 30mm thickness wouldn't be able to be cut with that stuff. I do know that the thicker stuff is a lot harder to cut because there's obviously more material, so it's going to be harder to keep the blade straight, hence why people tend to use the table saws for that. I don't see why we can't do it for 30mm thickness, so we're just going to give it a shot and try it out in this video. Also, if you saw the last video where we unboxed this stuff, a couple of these did get damaged during shipping, so we do have quite a little bit of real estate here that we're gonna have to cut off no matter what. So I figured this top sheet right here does have a little bit of indentation all over the corners, those nicks, a couple of scratches and divots on the top here. So I figured if we're gonna test this out, see if this works, this is a great sheet to be giving it a shot on. All right, so to get sizing for how we're gonna set up the table saw, last week when I was waiting for this stuff to get delivered, I did go ahead and make a template so that way I knew the exact drawer sizes and I could get ahead of the game and start pre-planning a couple of the drawer layouts for the tools. So that way when the stuff came in, I already had a game plan on what I was going to do. But since I did make a template, I figured what better way to figure out how big the cut has to be, because I know this template fits in the drawers perfectly, so that means if we cut the foam exactly to this size, this should perfectly fit as well. Like I said though, this is a test just to see if this is going to work. So I am going to end up making this test cut, this very first cut right here, just a little bit bigger. So this is a 19.5-inch width front to back for the drawer. So I'm gonna end up cutting these sheets to about 22.5 inches wide, just so we're barely taking an inch and a half off of the sheet. So that way, if this does not work, we don't ruin the entire sheet and not be able to get the final 19.5-inch width that we need. Another quick little note here. So we are tucked into like the little back corner of the garage just because the Genesis is in the garage and I don't feel like pulling it out and moving a couple cars around and then having to find somewhere to park this thing and to pull it in later. So excuse the fact that we are just tucked up against the garage doors right now. But without any further ado, I just want to get into cutting this stuff up. Gonna set up the table saw, lock the glides in place, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this cutting method works. All right, so quick little note before we move on. The heat just kicked on, so if you hear that in the background, I apologize. It's cold out here today, so like I said, I apologize. But to move on, let's talk into the cut. You couldn't tell from that last clip, that worked out absolutely fantastic. So this is the little strip we cut off. As you can see, that was the side that had the indentation. So this needed to be cut off no matter what. It was unusable to me. So that's why I figured this was a great section to cut and use as a test piece. But this is the sheet, this is the cut end right here. Take a look at it. Super smooth cut, no tear out across the top. If I'm being honest with you, this might actually be a better cut than the one on this side from the manufacturer. So super happy with that. Super glad that worked out. So 30mm thickness, has no problem being cut on the table saw. The only thing that I'm going to just kind of note and update for the next little rip we do is I have this blade set to just above the height of the thickness of the material. I'm just gonna raise that a little bit because the material is so flimsy. When you got to the end, it wanted to kind of float up on you. So I'm just gonna raise that up to make sure it goes through the top surface the whole way across, and it was just a little too close. So we're gonna raise that maybe about 1/4 of an inch. But I'm pretty happy with how this came out. I'm gonna go grab a template on the cart, get these glides set to the final overall width, get this a nice rip to width, and then hopefully we're gonna spin it around and try and get the cross sections cut on the table saw as well. Then we can finally see if that template size is going to fit inside the drawers. So let's just get right into doing that right now. All right, guys, so happy to report that worked out absolutely fantastic. Love the way this turned out. Couldn't have turned out any better. Unfortunately, I forgot to turn the camera on and record ripping it to width and then cross-cutting it. Cross-cutting stuff without a cross-cutting sled, which I don't have, sometimes a little tricky, sometimes doesn't work out. Luckily, the material is easy enough to cut through that I was able to hold it through, cross-cut it without a problem. Nice square cuts. Let me see if I can line this up one-handed, but as you can see, nice square cuts. Let me see, flip this around. Look at that. Nice, square, even cuts, everything's straight, everything's perpendicular. Super pumped with how this came out. If you guys are cutting this stuff up, this is definitely the method that I'm going to use in the future and the one I would recommend to people. Next step, we gotta try and test fit this to fit into the drawers. Which one of these is empty? Yeah, there we go, first try. But we're gonna try and test fit this piece in this drawer. Hopefully I didn't make it too tight, because like I said, I did use a template, but the template was tight, so hopefully the foam has just enough give to get it to fit nice and snug in there. But it also needs to be loose enough and able to be popped back out, so that way I can take it out, cut the tools out, and then if I ever want to move the drawers around and rearrange things, I can do so in the future. So without any further ado, we're going to set you guys up on a tripod, I should say, and we'll try and test fit the very first one and see how well we did. Alrighty, so first little test piece we got here. I think this is width. Yep. Oh, I did make this a little tight. Hopefully we can get this in. This foam does have a little bit of give to it. So tuck that side in, tuck this side in, and then just like that. Oh, that is a perfect fit. Check this out. Absolutely perfect fit. Love the way that turned out. It is a little tight, shouldn't be a problem. I don't think I'm gonna trim off anything on this one. Let's see if we can get this out now. All right, so let's see if we can get this out. I'm gonna start in this front corner, stick a finger in there, see if we can get this out. Oh, there we go. No damage. Just like that, it's out. All right, guys, so if you couldn't tell from that last clip, fit was absolutely perfect. It was a little tight, was a little snug, but I think it will be perfectly fine at the end of the day. The only thing I have a worry about is once we get the actual tools laid out, cut out, and put back in the drawers, if the cutouts for the tool is going to be a little too tight because it's a little bit of a snug fit in there. If that is the case, we can just go back to the table saw and just shave off a little tiny bit from each end here and take care of that problem. But going forward, this is definitely the way that I would recommend doing it. This is how I'm going to do all of my cuts, especially like me. I have a ton of cuts to make. I have 8 sheets here that I need to cut up into about 16 to 20 drawers, depending on how many drawers I can get out of all this material. So if you're like me, you have a bunch of cuts to make. This is definitely the easiest, cleanest, simplest, like streamlined way to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the table saw to the final depth here, front to back, which is about 19.5 inches. Rip everything down to size on that. That way I can have all the pieces nice and consistent. Then I can just come back, change up the table saw to the overall side to side width, and then I can just cross cut everything nice and easy, make everything clean, make everything consistent. The good thing about this is I do have a couple of scrap pieces like these cutoffs right here. So I'm going to, off camera later on today after we wrap this video up, I'm going to start practicing laying out, tracing, and cutting the tools and peeling the foam in these little scrap cutoff pieces. That way, when I go ahead to do it in here, I'm not doing the first time ever doing it on the final piece, because I don't want to ruin something that I'm going to be using. These are just scraps, cutoffs that I'm not going to use. So we're going to practice on that. But we're going to wrap up today's video. We're just going to focus this video on cutting to size and using the table saw as a cutting method on this stuff. Definitely recommend it if you have a table saw. This is the way to do it. Highly recommend it. But for today, peace out, and we'll catch you on the next one.